Well, we're away, and this is actually 2016, and we're into the third day, fourth day.
So this is for our friends over there in Britain. He's laughing like crazy because what we're actually doing is we're saying Happy New Year to you from the
Austin 10.
The front seat of an Austin 10. Now, this car is probably older than both our combined ages. Well,
not quite.
Minus a few percent.
It's 84 years old this year.
It's just not much older than me, Brian.
So, actually specifically thinking of our dear friends in the UK, Justin, Al, Dave, John.
Yep. Anyone else out there who wants a credit?
Well, we did have Murray, my brother.
We did.
He seems to have dropped off, but he's in New Zealand, so he doesn't count.
Yeah.
But we're talking about the UK people. And I guess we've been having some interesting conversations as usual. Nick is showing himself to be extremely tolerant of the theists in this group. And the steering wheel's getting in the way a wee bit.
It's pretty good, really, isn't it?
But that is interesting. That adds an interesting feature. By the way, the Austin 10 is going really well.
I couldn't believe it. Brian drove this thing up this hill here, and when we talk about hills in New Zealand, we don't really do hills. We only do mountains, don't we? And he's got his eye on the bloody pressure gauge. He's got his eye on the oil gauge, and he's saying, look, this is a slap bath oil, no pump, nothing like that. If the angle of the dangle's wrong, there's going to be no bloody oil in the bearings, and they're going to go clunk. And and then he goes, oh, the temperature's a bit high, and I'm thinking to myself, oh, God, do people really drive these things?
Well, actually, no, but actually what Nick is saying, however, I was driving it the other day and I realised what a primitive little beast this is. So 1933, came out in 1932, the first Austin 10, but in 1933 they slightly improved it. I'm not quite sure how, but I thought better to have the 1933 model because then they would have the benefit of, what they needed to fix from 1932. They didn't have a water pump in this model. It's just a thermosiphon. And it's true what Nick says. It's got a splash-fed crank and there's a bit of oil pressure, though. What on earth's that doing there?
I'll get rid of it. You'll be right.
Right. Sorry, guys.
If you guys just saw a keyboard, it's our fault.
Yeah. I'm not sure what they did, but however, we'll see. Hey, actually, this reminds me, I was listening to a playback of Peter Cook and Dudley Moore the other morning on our radio, and they were incredibly funny, but they were talking about art. Do you remember? Oh. And anyway, what happens is that they were saying, a good painting, the eyes follow you around the room. And they went on talking about this, and then one of them said, no, it's not the eyes, the bottom has to follow you. And I mean, it was just so weird. And one of them, I think it was Peter Cook, he said, when he was in the bathroom doing something, and he had a feeling that eyes were watching him,
Yeah, he's a genius, that man.
Yeah, I know these people are all dying dead on us, Yeah. And here we are, Nick and I. By the way, we do have actually different perspectives and views of reality, but we're not going to go hanging each other or, drawn pistols or anything like that.
I've actually had your name out to the jihadists, but I said they had a list. They keep on being given names by other people too, so I think everyone's in on the game,
Well, I was actually quite impressed with, I'd done a bit of a search because Dave Morgan, he's a demon at posting stuff there, but to get a hook into you. And it was something to do with how would Martin Luther respond to this issue of Islam. There was a church here, my goodness, where they wanted to get rid of the crosses and have a place for Islamic preachers or whatever, So anyway, I went back to my dear friend Martin, Dr. Martin, for advice on this matter, and I found quite an interesting little piece on his commentary on Islam. And it was quite interesting, actually, and it's not a new issue. This whole thing about the Muslim coming to Europe and Europeans having to fight, you'd think it only just started.
Well, it's not. I mean...
No. There's a lot of history behind...
I always laugh at the... I probably said this to people before about You know, we've got this thing about, we invaded them, we went crusading. Well, the Pope had a good reason for actually calling a crusade. He had Islamic people bloody raiding Rome and up and down Italy, taking over Sicily, and also half of Spain was still being Islamic. And as far as he was concerned, he was under siege. He was just taking the battle over the water. You know? And that's, yeah, sure, he had some really good religious excuses in terms of wanting some control of the Holy Land, but from a geopolitical viewpoint, it just made perfect sense to use the rest of Europe to get these buggers bound on the back foot.
Yeah, and it just so happened that at the time when they needed to be united, unfortunately Europe was thrown into turmoil with Protestant and Counter-Reformation religious and political issues.
Yeah, and there's another part there which, from a historic viewpoint, a lot of people don't understand the significance of the Ottoman invasion of Central Europe. And they were at the gates of Vienna in the 1600s, and the Counter-Reformation's going on, and the Christians got to look at it and say, hey, hang on, guys, we're fighting one another, and we've got the real infidels, you know, sitting outside Vienna and rampaging around Central Europe.
That's right, that's right. No, and I mean, interesting times. And, you know, people try and make things as black and white as possible. That's part of the human condition. Unfortunately, it was all grey, and it still is.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, just very difficult to... And I have to say, guys, I am actually having trouble from time to time making sense out of what the hell's going on. I mean...
well, so am I, because I haven't actually... I actually flicked through the internet the other day, and I came across the Vladimir Putin New Year calendar, and man, that guy, he's the tops. We got a man with a wolverine on his head trying to become president in the US, and you got Vlad taking his shirt off and going fishing. I mean, he's the man, him on horseback. It's can you just imagine him and Donald together? It's going to be a riot, I tell you. It's going to be cool.
The thing is, there's so much propaganda and misinformation and so forth about everything that's happening.
Yeah.
And, I mean, for example, I was quite interested in that actor, Seagal. What's his first name?
Steven
Seagal, yeah. He's got a peculiar relationship with Putin, and he's not silly. Having said that, I don't think Donald Trump is either, actually.
No, I actually...
And that's a bit of a problem.
I'd like Vlad to actually ask Marine Le Pen out to a ball or something this year. Just to make life interesting. I can see the paparazzi trailing that one and being nobbled by the KGB.
Oh, my goodness. Now, Nick, I already see we've run into 8 minutes and 10 seconds on this, you know.
You can see how we're going to treat the new year, don't you? You know, we're going to be good at this.
Our opening shot for 2016, Nick and Bryan in the 1933 Austin 10. We've been driven into the man cave because the family are in the house renovating and turning the place upside down and making a lot of noise.
I suggested we did it over in the garage, and we ended up in the car. Because
so, I mean, this is even better still.
This is the best recording studio around, don't you reckon? We can play Dixieland jazz and it will sound great.
Yeah, I know.
Plunka, plunka.
I know. So, no, I'm just having drawing blanks inside my head, but actually tomorrow, going into the centre of the North Island, deep into the bush with the bicycles to escape. Love doing those bush rides, and so I'll be away for a few days, but not long. I don't know what Nick's going to do. He's probably going to
I've actually got a really busy week this week, because this is prime gathering time. Yesterday I made 2 pots of jam out of raspberries in my garden. And I made some red currant jelly as well. And tomorrow, we've had a bit of rain, or the next day, depending on how warm it is tomorrow, I'm going to be going getting a whole pile of plums beside the road. We got the plum sauce and the plum wine to make. So that's on the agenda for this week. And I've also got to fill up for bloody the bins for winter for pine cones and all of that kind of nonsense. So this week is basically the big poozling week.
Interesting you should mention pine cones, because I got into a lot of trouble domestically. I put a pine cone in our pellet fire. I wanted to see
That
how
would
it
have been
worked.
fun. I don't drop down through the hole very well.
No. And so you have to open the door of the fire and put the pine cone in the little firebox. And actually, the irony is that it burnt really well, and I still can't really see what crime I committed, but you'd think I had by the kinds of protests that were taking place. And
Well, I got some protests lighting the barbecue over at Christmas Day. We had a barbecue out on the lawn in my brother's house. He's a good man. He's got a grand piano he stripped the, the big bloody harp frame out of and planted a vegetable garden in it outside. Looks quite good, actually. But he was having trouble lighting the barbecue, and I don't know what it was going wrong, but I came over and moved the charcoal aside and poured a packet of chips, which I'd just taken off of his 6-year-old daughter, and crisps, whatever you want to call them. I put them in there and put the light to them. They went like a rocket. You wouldn't believe it. They're great for lighting barbecues.
oh,
People were looking at me strangely saying, why is he burning that stuff? I'm thinking, shit, well, you want your sausages.
so, Lonnie, as you can see, we are continuing to be somewhat unconventional in our behaviour, which is a great thing.
Yeah.
I just want to end. I'll end on this note, and Nick will have say something as well. I'm sure he's going to have the last word. But I keep being reminded of Bob Hope. And he got up and he said, well, the good news is Jesus is coming back, and the bad news is he's really pissed off. So I'll leave on that note.
I think I'll leave on that one too. That's good. See ya.